If anybody asks me, why did you win MasterChef? I think first I will say, I honestly don't know. My second answer will be, I don't think it was the food alone. I was calling a friend in Athens, the only person who knew about it, every day, and I would say, they put me through again. I don't understand it. I was terrible. I made so many mistakes. What's going on? In banking, trapped by mortgages, responsibilities, life, I suppose. But having spent the 32 years, totally resenting it. Be prepared to do the work. You may have ambition, you may have ideas, but you really need to work to get the results.
So you're in for a real treat with my next guest. She is a UK MasterChef winner. You would class her as an influencer, and she is just done so well for herself. She tells such an interesting story. Her name is Irini Tzortzoglou, and she's from Crete. She was a banker in a previous life. She's quite a spiritual person, a really beautiful soul. You're going to get insights into what it's like to be a MasterChef, how to cope under pressure, but also she's going to share with you her reasons why she felt she won MasterChef, and it's not going to be what you think, and what that's taught her. And she's a really humble lady, but also how she's built this amazing business, which aligns perfectly with the topics on optimizing your brilliance, because part of optimizing who you are is looking after your health and your well-being so you can be at your best. She does retreats in Crete and Morocco, and they sound just heavenly. And the way she takes care of people, it's really wonderful. So I can't wait for you to meet her. Not only is she a MasterChef winner, she's written an amazing book. I've just ordered it for Mike. I'm going to get her to autograph it because she lives in Cumbria, which is fabulous. It means that I'll be able to stay connected with her. She's also, I didn't even know this existed, an olive oil and a honey sommelier. So if you go and follow her on Instagram, that's her main account, you'll see she does like really fantastic tips. If you're into your food, if you're a foodie, loads of tips about how to eat healthy with her recipes. And yeah, she's just an amazing person. So really looking forward to digging into this interview. Hi, welcome to the Optimizing Your Brilliance podcast, where we get to the source of what makes people brilliant and explore how to eradicate the barriers that stop you from shining. By shining, I mean being at your absolute best in both work and life. You'll hear from business and thought leaders who bear all and share their insider secrets, along with my episodes focused on optimizing your performance, productivity, success, and well-being. My name is Estelle Reid, founder of Be, executive coach, speaker, and best-selling author of Inner Brilliance, Outer Shine, 10 Antidotes to Imposter Syndrome, Workaholism, and Stress. So, if you're ready to take your work life to the next level, let's begin. So welcome everyone. I've got Irini with me here today. I'm really excited to be interviewing you. We met at Christmas, didn't we? At a wonderful
That's
party.
right.
So I'm so excited to have you here, and we're going to dive straight in. So to get a sense of who you are, what's an average day like for you?
These days, not one single day actually is the same with the previous one. It evolves, my days evolve by the tasks that are in front of me. So they could be developing recipes, they could be writing a feature, working on my social media, creating content for people I collaborate with, researching retreats, speaking or contacting my retreat guests. So it's very, very exciting. And of course, there are days when I'm in a train traveling to London because I'm going to be cooking for a big number of people. So a big variety in my life, which I love.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I was looking at your social media account because you're an influencer, aren't you now? I was like, wow. In fact, I'll be honest, I looked at your account and I said to my husband, who is also a foodie, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I didn't look at her account before I invited her on. I said, because I feel like I'm punching way above my weight. I said, she's a proper influencer.
Well, You probably also know, though, that social media is a picture, but it's not necessarily the truth or the substance of somebody's life. And interestingly, I never saw myself as an influencer until recently at one of my retreats, which, I made with small groups of people. They're very intimate. When I realized that the group who were there were listening and following things that I was saying and doing that went beyond the kitchen. So when we went into a shop that sold cosmetics, and I said, oh, I need to get some of this cactus oil because it's brilliant for my face. About 6 women out of 12 wanted that oil. And it was things like that that made me think, oh, goodness, this is a responsibility in a tiny scale, in a very, very small way. I'm influencing what people are doing. And
Yes.
that was really telling, much, much more than I ever felt it through social media.
And it's when you are on social media, it is a real pressure, isn't it, to produce content? I'm on a 2 week gap currently. So I give myself a break every now and then. So I've pressed pause on my podcast. I've had a break from social media. How do you think about your ideas for content? And because I was saying that you have such beautiful videos. I saw your video on wild garlic and the one on the carrots. The carrot recipe looks amazing. That's what I sent to my friend. So, how do you come up with the ideas and how much time does it take to create all of that content?
Well, all the young influencers on social media say, oh, you should only take an hour a week and create all your content and post 3 times a week. And I am not very good like that. Now, I have reached an age where, yes, I recognize social media as part of my world and people need to see me and connect with me, but I refuse to become a slave to it. I need to be excited myself and I need to be inspired to create something. And therefore, I am not so strategic. It's one thing to create strategy when something really matters to you, but with social media, let's say it's a necessary evil for me.
Yes.
And therefore, you won't see very regular posts. You won't see the very fast and furious and gimmicky things. They don't represent me. I see a lot of recipes and food posts and reels that I think are absolutely appalling. And I don't want to fall into that trap for the sake of followers.
Mm,
Let the people who are in tune with me
mm,
and like what I am about follow me if they want to, because I also appreciate that our time is incredibly valuable and we are bombarded by so much, so
mm.
much. I catch myself on days thinking, oh my goodness, I never responded to that post I saw on LinkedIn 5 days ago and I wanted to, but something clearly happened and interrupted me. So I take social media with a pinch of salt
But
and I let it be what it is.
but you're clearly very successful at it. If you've got 154,000 followers, that's on Instagram. So at what point did things really take off? When did you go, oh wow, this has become a thing?
I'm not sure that it was a specific point. I think people do want to see you again and again. It did help that I was invited back by MasterChef to critique, and I'm invited every year. So people see you on TV, they then see a feature about you or an article, they then see your book. It's actually a combination of things, word of mouth. One day you post something that attracts a lot of attention because the algorithm likes it, and that brings you lots of followers. I remember when my book was published, John Torrod's wife picked it up in their house. She said, this book came for John, not for me. And I flicked through it, and my God, it's such a beautiful book, blah, 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 blah. And immediately I had hundreds of followers.
Wow.
So it's chance events, little things that happen that bring new people to your world, I suppose.
Yes. No, and your book does look beautiful. In fact, I've tagged it to get it for Mike, as I say. He is, and it's called, is it Under the Olive Tree?
Yes.
Yes.
What you don't know, Estelle, is why it's called Under the Olive.
Yes, tell me.
It's very amusing. I was telling the publishers we were struggling with names and we still hadn't decided on a name, but I was telling them this story whereby for years I was convinced my mother gave birth to me under an olive tree. I have no idea where that came from. And one day I repeated that in front of John. And my mother said, "What are you telling your husband? This is nonsense. I gave birth to you in the house, at our home." And I found it very amusing that the child's imagination had clearly created a very romantic setting for my birth. And
Oh,
the publishers and I laughed a lot and they said, "Oh, well, we have the name for the book. It has to be Under the Olive Tree."
and and that segues nicely into your origin story. Tell us, because we love Crete. It's probably the island we visit the most. So, tell us about your origin story. What makes you you?
I grew up in a small farming hamlet. I think my mom was one of the young, active, hospitable, kind housewives who had come into the village. She married my father, who was a local. She came from another village. And our house was like a hub. People would come, old women would come every evening. The fire would be lit in the winter time. Now, we were incredibly poor. We all lived in this one room. There was an adjacent room for my brothers, but the one room was kitchen, dining room, my parents' bedroom. That's where we concentrated every evening. And I remember as a child being fascinated by human relationships. I was really listening to what was said, what made people, what pressed their buttons, what made them feel safe, what made them react. And I realized as I was growing up that it was that curiosity that developed in me as emotional intelligence and
Yeah.
empathy. And
Yes.
those two things have been incredibly useful in my life.
Yeah.
They served me very well as a stepmom,
Yeah.
and they really helped my competition time on mass. And even now, emotional intelligence and empathy are incredibly important to my retreat work
Yes.
because there are different people from different backgrounds, different ages, and my responsibility is to be there for them all and ensure that each one of them takes out of that valuable week what they need. But very often, there are people who live by themselves. They come away nervous because they're solo travelers, they're lonely. And I realized that far beyond the demos and the olive oil tastings and the honey tastings and the excursions, they actually want connection, they want empathy, they want somebody to care and nurture. And I have those things.
Ah,
And I owe them to my childhood.
yes. Oh, no, that is wonderful. And I read that on your website and I thought, I saw that you'd put in black and white, you may be nervous if you come on our retreat. And I thought, how lovely for you to acknowledge that because I would feel a little bit nervous. And it was lovely that I saw a couple had been, and I wondered about the story about that. I thought, oh, I wonder if they'd met on the retreat or whether it was just something else. Anyway, so that is really fascinating. So, can we connect the dots between, because obviously you were in banking, MasterChef, now running retreats, now running Irini Cooks. How, tell me about that journey. How do you get from there to there?
Yes. Well, things happen to us, circumstances that take us down a certain road, I suppose. And my life shifted at specific moments. So the first shift was when my father died of a heart attack at the age of 48. I was getting ready to go to university in Athens, but his death meant that we uprooted and moved to Crete. In Crete, I knew the timing wasn't right for me. I wanted to open my wings and fly, and the family was so closely knit and controlling that it was stopping me do that, find my own 2 feet. So I married my first husband, moved to London. At the time that I moved, the university year had already started, so I couldn't think about going to do a course. But a friend said, "What about trying some work until you go to uni? Why don't you go to the National Bank of Greece and get a job and be with Greeks and not feel lonely?" And I thought, okay, all right, banking is not.
Hello, can you do me a favour? Would you mind either liking or subscribing wherever it is that you listen? So maybe that's on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, because that will help us to keep going and keep growing. The other thing that would be really helpful is if you could share it with someone that would also benefit from the content. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Right, let's get on.
Something that ever appealed to me, but I will do it. And 32 years later, I am
Wow.
in banking, trapped by mortgages, responsibilities, life, I suppose. But having spent the 32 years totally resenting it and doing things to balance. So I would decorate colleagues' houses over the weekend because I was always interested in interior design. I would belong to committees and organize charity events. In the end, once I overcame a limiting belief about me, I enrolled in university and I did a part-time degree in history of art. So there were things that I was doing to bring joy in my life, but still I was in that environment, the banking environment. And when John, who was also my husband, my second husband in financial services, and he suggested that we leave that world behind, I jumped at the opportunity. So at that point, we moved to Cambria. It freed me, not having this very demanding, pressurized job at the time, freed me to go and spend time with my mom in Crete, who was getting older by the day. But it also made me feel unchallenged and bored. I was in my early 50s and I was in this beautiful medieval village, beautiful, stunning countryside, where we live. Even now, I look at Carmel Valley and I think, my gosh, we're so blessed. But there wasn't that challenge, when I would wake up in Wimbledon at 6 o'clock to be in the city by 8, to come back at 9, that drive, that energy, that pressure. And together, I suppose, with all that comes the adrenaline, right? Suddenly I was like, what am I doing? What actually is making me wake up in the mornings? And after a lot of nagging, it was John's suggestion that I do MasterChef because I was driving him insane. I want to set up a business. I want to import beauty things from Greece, natural products. I want to make candles. I was exploring, ideas. I really was itchy. And I should have known that about me and possibly plan for what happens after banking. But the desire to live was so strong that it was okay, let's live and whatever happens, happens. And that's where sometimes maybe we need to surrender, I am a spiritual person. I'm not religious in the sense that I will go to church every Sunday, but I do believe, and I believe in a higher power outside me. I need that. And therefore, I like to surrender to it at times.
Yes.
So
And
you and I talked about MasterChef, and I prepared because I was 60. I was going to be 60, and I did it to mark that big momentous year.
yeah,
I wanted that challenge, but I also didn't want to go and embarrass myself. I didn't want to go and fail straight away. So I planned before I applied. I spent about 8 months, 10 months before I even applied.
wow.
Now, if you know about the process, millions apply, and only between 45 and say 57 end up in the studio. So
Yeah.
what it was that made me put a lot of energy and planning into something that it had tiny percentages, to become successful, for me to even reach the studio, never mind win, I don't know what it was. It reinforces in a way my beliefs, something like that. that we can do all we can and all we want and plan and prepare, but ultimately, perhaps we need to accept that some things are going to happen to us, irrespective, and it's what we decide to do with them then that shapes the rest of our life, you know.
Yeah. What
So
do you
I did,
mind me do you mind me asking what challenges you faced? Because you shared a little bit when we met at the party, because this podcast is about optimizing performance. What were the challenging moments for you, either limiting belief wise or disaster wise, and how did you overcome those things when you were on the
sure,
show?
yeah, limiting beliefs were a big thing. I was calling a friend in Athens, the only person who knew about it, every day, and I would say, Chrisuli, they put me through again. I don't understand it. I was terrible. I made so many mistakes. What's going on? I feel like a puppet. It's not me cooking. It's not. And I have been very blessed in my life to meet people, key people who played very important roles. So my good friend said to me, I know what you're struggling with. You don't know your sacred gifts. That's why. And I have bought you as a program called Your Sacred Gifts by this incredible woman in Canada. You do all the sessions and you will understand what's happening. And it was fabulous. It was wonderful. I realized, for example, that naturally I do have the gift of encouragement. I do have the gift of creativity, hospitality, teaching. And I was pushing against my success, ignoring that actually I was pushing away from what I was gifted with, that wasn't even my own creation, because they're called sacred gifts. They are by inspiration, if you like, divine inspiration. Like we see sometimes hairdressers with terrible hair, but they are amazing hairdressers, right? Or incredible psychologists, but with terrible problems. These people have the gifts for the
Yeah.
sake of other people, but we
Yes.
don't always know that. So that and consulting with a customer, an ex-client of mine from the bank who was a psychotherapist, you see, what he saved me at very important times of my life was recognizing my limitations, that I don't know it all.
Yeah.
That's another thing that banking taught me. When it
Yeah.
came to drafting a contract, a lending agreement, I knew that I had to go to the best lawyers for that to protect the bank's interests. Yes, I could make a commercial document myself, but what did I know about law? And all those years dealing with professionals, assessors, architects, I was involved in every aspect of the bank I worked with at the time, taught me that we need to seek help. We need, and very often to pay for that, not to be misery, really pay
Yeah.
professionals to be there for us. So I contacted this ex-customer and I said, Theo, help. I am struggling with the praise I get. I really push it back to the point where the production company get really frustrated with me. They want me to be happy. They want me to show, after all, that's what makes good TV, right? Be
Yeah.
enthusiastic and full of your success. And I couldn't do it. And he said to me, okay, he was a very matter-of-fact psychologist. I love him to bits. He said to me, have you stopped to ask yourself, what right have you got to push back on that praise? And have you stopped to ask yourself if the praise is only for your endeavors or it is for the influence that your grandmothers had on you, that all the people who were in your life that brought you where you are now, the producers of the wonderful ingredients of your bank, the production team that are there to make you feel good and they work for hours working with you. And immediately, because it resonated on a cerebral level, I said,
Yeah.
I get it. Yep, no right whatsoever to push back. I embrace it. I accept it. Next time they tell me, well done, I will say, thank you. Yes, I feel great. I feel happy. And
That's great.
I was 60. So, and recognizing that we're never too old to learn
No,
gives
that's
me
it.
such a buzz.
And you know, I often deal with imposter syndrome. That's one of the themes, that's what I've written about. And one of the antidotes is to allow positive feedback to stick like Velcro rather than allowing it to fly off like
Wash
Teflon.
over.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what was it that was for you? What was it that was getting in the way of you receiving those compliments and that feedback? What made it not okay to receive that?
Yes. I grew up with a very strict father for whom nothing I ever did was good enough. It always had room for improvement. And the mother, who was a priest's daughter, brought up very strictly, very ethically, very religiously, for whom modesty was a big thing. You could not blow your own trumpet. You had to put other people first. You should not forget where you come from, your background. Being born in a village, in a poor family, there were limitations. So set your sights low so you don't get disappointed. In a way, that kind of modesty was almost self-erasure, you know? And I carried it until I was about in until my early mid 40s. And I knew that it sat very heavily on my shoulders. And one day I came across a fantastic program, residential psychotherapy called the Hoffman process. It was devised by an American psychotherapist in the 60s, I believe, or even earlier, called Hoffman. I can't remember his Christian name. And it's done in the UK and it's done in the States, and NASA puts sometimes astronauts through it. And basically, that 1 week residential course without phones, without contact with the outside world, or whatever, helps you go back and in and understand a lot about you.
Mm.
So that was the first thing that showed me what was holding me back. And once I became aware, because I believe awareness is always half the battle of anything we attempt in life,
Mm.
once I became aware, I started working at that.
That
And it was reminders, it was even self praise, even though I didn't believe in things, I would tell myself those things, and
But what you did very cleverly with your psychotherapist is you reframed receiving positive feedback, didn't you? You connected it to everyone else. And that is such a beautiful thing to do. And we talk about feedback is a gift, isn't it?
that's
Because
right.
somebody has taken time to give it to you. And I was saying to Irini earlier that because I watched her in the MasterChef program. My husband and I are big fans. And I, when I rewatched the final, what was it like that moment when they called your name out? Because it made I teared up because I love to see people succeed. And I was like, oh, wow, what a moment for you. How did you feel in that moment?
Yes. Well, I told you about all the praise I was receiving all along. Actually, once I held the physical trophy, that's when it sunk in for the first moment. But the immediate reaction was, oh my goodness, me winning it. It means my two good friends now haven't won it. So I
Oh,
wanted to acknowledge them.
yes, I
I
remember.
really, if it was a physical financial reward, I would have wanted to share it with them because we
Oh,
had been on exactly the same journey. And it was just that day that clinched it. That's what I thought. The second emotion was gratitude. And it goes back and is linked to that conversation with you and me understanding on an intellectual level, which then made it acceptable on an emotional level, the fact that we are who we are and where we are, not only because of our own doing.
yes,
So, what about acknowledging everything and everyone else who's been there on our journey?
yes,
And I think the emotion was driven by the gratitude
yeah, yeah. And
and the
so,
honoring, I suppose. I felt that if all my loved ones who were no longer there or who were not with me there, how proud they would feel, how they would share that moment with me.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so then what happened after that? And how do we end up delivering these amazing retreats? Because I was saying earlier that the Optimizing Brilliance podcast listeners, they're very much interested in health and well-being. And I was saying, your retreats look amazing, from a eating beautiful food perspective, but from a mental health perspective. Tell us about how you go from MasterChef then to retreats and doing what you're doing now.
I do believe that everything we learn, those early life observations, all the questioning hours that I spend, why this? Why am I doing this? Why is this happening to me? Why? All that culminates in what event in in what we do at some point in our life. So I kept questioning, even beyond MasterChef, why did I win it? Does the world need another cook? Does the world need another food writer? Things are evolving all the time. People now are looking on the internet for recipes. What am I going to actually share with you that is going to be so new and so novel and so, out of your own scope of reach? Or I wasn't happy with the things that with the limitations of the things I was doing. Appearing in festivals, yes, lovely. You come in contact with people, you have a chance to talk a little bit and empower them for a few moments. Cooking a beautiful private dinner and getting the praise, wonderful. But it's moments, moments, moments. I wanted something with a longer lasting impact on me, on my psyche, and a longer impact on others. And I think the retreat happened by accident. The first retreat, I was approached by a travel company. They said to me, how would you fancy doing a retreat for us in Crete? I thought, oh yeah, great. I'll devise it. I planned it all. I love the research of anything. I did that. What then happened was at the end of the retreat, all the guests asked me, would I be repeating the retreat the following year? And I found the question really strange because I thought, why would you come back to do exactly the same thing? So when I asked them, they said, oh, yes, we would come back to do exactly the same thing. And at that point, I thought, okay, there's more to this retreat than going to the winery, doing the demos, eating together. There's more to it. And I then wanted to repeat it closer to my home, another part of the island in Crete. And the first retreat was only women. It just happened. It was only women. And that's where I observed who these people were. Why were they there? Always feeling grateful for their trust. For their trust in me. I never lose gratitude in everything I do. It's a huge driver for me. But it made me really consider when the retreat ended and I got gifts and cards and letters that followed, and the retreat guests stayed in contact with each other. After every retreat, there is a WhatsApp group, and I watch. I warn them that I may not be active, but I will stay there in case they ever ask a question that needs me. And they're friends. And after years, they ask each other, or they show off an olive oil they bought, or they say, this is what we went and did, or this is what we enjoyed, or shall we do a reunion? And that's why I'm doing one in Cambria next year, which is actually a reunion retreat.
Wow.
So it's a very humbling experience for me, but it gives me a huge buzz to know that at the end of that week, people live with, what's the expression? Something in their a
Yes.
bounce, you know?
Yes.
They live very differently than how they were when they arrived.
Yes. And you were saying earlier you watched and you understood why they were there. What conclusions did you come to?
So the first retreat was made up of, I think, 8, 10 women, and every one of them was there for a different reason. Somebody wanted to feel that they belonged in a group. Somebody needed to share because they didn't have a lot of family close by or friends. Somebody had lost her husband a year before and was still mourning and still felt lonely. Somebody felt very insecure about their physical appearance and said to me at some point that they felt very close to me through observing my insecurities during MasterChef and felt that they were coming into a safe environment. He was there because she had sights on applying for MasterChef and thought that she would learn a lot from me.
Yeah.
Somebody was there because she actually has a terrible relationship with her daughter and understood enough about me and my relationship with my mother by the way I referred to her and my grandparents or whatever. And she thought that she would find some peace and possibly learn something from my life to take
Gosh.
back home. So psychology was a big part of why these women were there.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't
Yeah.
just let's go and have another holiday. Oh, and yes, we saw Irini, let's go and keep company with Irini. It was, but what happened during the week was then seeing these women, because I on purpose would leave them alone in the evening for them to gel, for them to find what things they had in common. And also, I didn't want them to feel that I was like a safety blanket.
Yes.
And I would go back to my house and receive WhatsApps at 1 o'clock in the morning, sitting in one balcony, drinking, going for a walk in the village, chatting, you know. So at the end of the week, all these women had connected, and
Yes.
that connection stayed beyond the week.
Yeah. What a
So
gift.
it goes back to the long-term effect I told you it has, to the
Yeah.
point where I said to John after a very tiring retreat, because there were quite a few people. I lead retreats for Saga Travel, and some people are elderly and some of
Mhm.
them have mobility problems. And I still need to be there to assist and help, and physically as well. And I said, I really feel tired, but you know how I feel after this week? If this travel agency, if this company came to me and said, Lini, we don't have any money to pay you, but if you want to lead the retreats going forward for your sake, feel free. I said to him, I would do it.
Ah,
So I was physically exhausted, but I was so full emotionally and mentally by the difference I saw in these people that I thought, I can do this.
what
Charity
diff
work.
what difference did you see in them?
Well, somebody came and said, I'm here because my wife brought me. Do not get me up to cook with you. I'm not going to participate. I'm just going to sit here and drink. Well, I'm a little bit naughty and cheeky, and I won't take something like that. It was like a red flag to a bully. So the
I
very
get people on my programs like that, and I love to turn them around, and then they're like your biggest fan, aren't they?
it's wonderful to see the transformation just by being yourself, right? Because I'm only being myself with these people, but I'm thinking perhaps if they observe me, they might think, okay, I want a bit of that. So the first thing we do is a pottery session, and I stood above this gentleman and I said, now, would you like a bit of help to create your salad bowl? And he said, yes, please. And I knew he really wanted me to make it. And I did make it. But occasionally I would say, aren't we doing great, Stuart? Isn't this turning out a beautiful bowl? You are amazing. And, you know, I would tease him.
Did he receive your feedback?
Well, no. But the interesting thing was he being the quietest, least assured, self-assured person, least involved. The last evening, he was the one who got up and he said, I would like you all to allow me to say a few words.
Ah,
And he said that this was the most amazing week in his life, the most transformative, the most. And
wow.
I was in tears. John had tears in his eyes,
Yeah.
you know, because this was somebody that you thought, yeah, he relaxed a little bit and he joked a little bit with me, and but he didn't seem to be very present, but everything was sinking in.
And
And then
because
some other times, simpler examples, people will come back and they will say, oh, I cooked this thing of yours and I love it. And now I'm entertaining and I'm cooking this. And when are we, let us, what's the next one? Is all these things show me that people crave, I suppose, a little bit of companionship, a little bit of connection, that safe environment where you're not judged, you're not pressed or pressurized to do anything. Just be and be nice weather, be in a nice environment.
well, I was saying earlier before we hit record that this is just like the perfect team event for corporate teams. And you were talking about trust and how it builds all of that. You know, it sounds really wonderful. So
It's people drop their defenses. So if you're thinking of a corporate world or team building, and the MasterChef studio was a huge teacher in many, many ways, because of course, until even in the final, it's three of you. You're never by yourself. So teamwork, trust in the others, helping the others. During MasterChef, you are plugged in and people in the studio can hear everything you say. But if you do a task and somebody needs a bit of help, they might ask you. And it's very interesting to watch the dynamics and what happens, because some people will say, well, I don't know. Some people will say, yes, I do know. I was asked one day a question and I said, I don't know, but let's go to Jilly because I'm sure she knows. So we kind of went and she gave the answer, and, the meringue turned out, and the production company watch all that, see all that. So if anybody asks me, why did you win MasterChef? I think first I will say, I honestly don't know. My second answer will be, I don't think it was the food alone. I think it was a combination of things. And going back to the emotional intelligence and the empathy, I think whatever we do in life are shaped by those things. And success cannot be success alone, and it won't be complete, I think, without those two things. So it was those they are integral part of me. That's who I am. Curious, empathetic,
yeah,
listening deeply doesn't come naturally. I'm still working at that, but I think it's an important part of successful people
yeah,
to be a good listener.
yeah,
But curiosity serves me well, and optimism. I have an
yes.
innate optimism and belief and, faith, and that really helped me overcome difficulties, obstacles, and be very joyous when joy comes, when happy times come.
Well, that leads really nicely because we are going to bring things to a close. So we always ask a couple of questions. So to summarize, thinking about your career or your life, if there were three things that you would recommend to the listeners, what would those three things be? Because you're clearly successful.
I don't know if I'm successful, but I'm happy. So in a way, that's success, right? So my lessons really have been and served me very, very well to be prepared to do the work. You may have ambition, you may have ideas, but you really need to work to get the results. Don't
Mm.
expect they will just materialize.
Just remind it, because you clearly worked so hard for MasterChef. What work was then required after that?
Well, even before it, I spoke about resenting banking, but actually, because I knew I wasn't naturally gifted for that role, I really had to work very hard to be good at it. So it, I did it during banking, and I built up a career out of a job that I didn't enjoy. I did it during MasterChef, and I won the trophy. And I continue to do it now because I want to continue to earn and deserve the trust of the people who employ me, who collaborate with me, who come to my retreats.
Yeah.
They don't just happen. Things don't just happen. You need to work at them. There are people who say to me, how do you do this? I could never do this. I could never retreat. You are a whole week on the go. You are on. And I say, but I enjoy the work.
Yes. And that is
So
key, isn't it? I'm the same. I love what I do. And I think if you are in line with purpose, you were talking about RNA gifts, it doesn't feel like work, does it?
no,
I mean,
that's
it can
right.
be hard work, don't get me wrong, but and also it's linked to longevity as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's recognized these days, yes.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, I indicated earlier to your listeners, because at different times of our life, we find ourselves emotionally in different places. Our ambition is at different level, our life circumstances. I would say never, never, never spend energy on resenting where you are.
Yeah.
Because I resented banking for 32 years. And, when I went to do my degree at Kingston University, I said, I don't have proof to show you that I'm even educated, that I finished high school. And they said to me, it's okay, you've given us your business card. We see you're a deputy manager of a bank. You wouldn't hold, at least we know you will be well organized to do your studying. And at that moment, I thought, oh my goodness, I need to be grateful to my job because it's enabling me, never mind that it was paying the mortgage or that it was covering, it was giving me a decent lifestyle, but actually it was helping in different ways. And then with MasterChef, if we would finish a task and the production company would say to me, so Irini, would you like to say something now to the explorers, to people like Sir Ranulph Fiennes? And I was in the company of native British people, but they were asking a Greek, a 60-year-old woman, to say something to the people we had just fed. And I believe the reason they did that again and again was because they were secure that I had the maturity and the ability to put some phrases together that would not embarrass them, that would be right, that they would be appropriate for the moment.
Yeah.
So please, everybody, embrace where you're at
Yes.
because that's preparing you for what comes next,
Yes.
even though you may not acknowledge it.
And that is such a valid point. Nothing is lost, is it? You can always take a lesson from something.
Yeah. And the last thing, which is an incredibly empowering tool for me, and every time I sit behind the wheel of the car, that's a great tip, by the way. If you are short of time, practice gratitude behind the wheel of your car. Think it, feel it, and voice it.
And
Because the first time I did the exercise, I got stuck at about 9 things to be grateful for. When now I start, there's no stopping me. It starts from the condition of the road on which I'm driving to the safety and quality of my car to everything else about my life.
I love the fact that you say, well, one, you're anchored to your car and the wheel, and two, you are saying it out loud and you are genuinely feeling it. That has all sorts of affects our body chemically in a positive way. It's really good for health, is gratitude. But I don't know about you, Irini, but I feel so grateful for the area we live in. And one of the adjustments we had to make, because we came from living in big cities to, I call it Postman Pat country. In fact, Postman Pat was created on street I can see out of my window. We went from driving fast, many lanes, to all of a sudden you get everywhere is slow, but you enjoy the scenery, and everywhere is so beautiful. And so that's how I do gratitude when we're driving. Instead of being stressed behind the wheel, I just enjoy the scenery. So our previous guest leaves a question for our future guest. And so Dr. Linda Blair's question, which is very apt for you, is if you could invite 3 people, living or dead, to have to dinner with you, who would you invite?
Wow, 3 people. Okay. One of them would be an author. When I was 30 years old, I was questioning everything. I felt a failure. I had just come through a divorce. I was questioning the meaning of life, and somebody recommended an author who was a psychiatrist, an Austrian psychiatrist who spent a lot of time in concentration camps and lost a lot of family. And his book was called Man's Search for Meaning. And I would love to have Viktor Frankl at my table
Wow.
because I think we would go very deep.
Yes.
It was a book that resonated with me and taught me a lot.
Mm,
I would love to have somebody who's seen the world from a position of incredible power, like Obama.
yes.
We are all, whether we like it or not these days, we are consumed by politics and what's happening in the world and political leaders. And I had a lot of respect for him while he was in power. And I would love to have the opportunity to talk about the challenges and the lessons, his lessons,
Yes.
and what he was able to apply from his life lessons into his work, which it can't get more challenging than that, can it?
No. He's such an authentic leader, isn't he? Or he's authentically confident. I miss him.
Yeah. Yeah. And authenticity is something that resonates a lot with people in every part of life. And I think allowing yourself, stripping yourself of all the noise and the image and be the real you really gains you. This is what makes you influential.
Mm.
It's not because it gains trust. It
Mm.
lets people drop their defenses. They feel I can be vulnerable too.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah.
And I think I would like an artist. The third person has to be an artist, somebody like Van Gogh, a leftover from my art years.
Yeah.
The challenges, the inspirations, the expression, the creativity. So nothing to do with food, but
Yeah.
yes, I think actually it would make a very nice dinner party.
Yeah, I'd love to be a fly on the wall. The conversations would be very deep, I
The only
think.
thing I feel sorry for is now that I didn't include a woman.
Well, you can have a fourth. Would you like to
I,
add a fourth?
yes, 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 yes. I would love to have Maria Callas because everybody can do with a bit of music in their life, right?
Yes. Yes.
Another complex, fascinating character and determined and strong and powerful and yet with her own humane weaknesses and
Yeah.
fascinating, incredible voice. She
Yeah.
could entertain us all at the end of the evening.
Yes. You'd be covered on all levels.
Yes.
You would learn, you'd be entertained. Would you do the cooking?
Yes,
Would
I
you?
would.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Remember, I have the gift of hospitality, right? So I
Yeah.
would have to cook.
Yeah. Your sweet treats at Deborah's party, they were amazing.
Thank you. Somebody last night, I went to a local pub with friends, and it's a friend. And he said to me, you know your Christmas treats that you give us every year. Can I have the recipe? I said, I'm sorry, Barry, it's in the book. And he said, Oh, I've got the book. I just don't know where they are.
Brilliant. So to close, what question would you like to leave for future guests?
Hmm. I would like to ask them what was the one belief that shaped them from their childhood,
Nice.
and which one was the one that they consciously decided to change.
Oh, yes. Those are such great questions. And even you were saying before about not feeling enough. When I work with some amazing individuals, they're all in high-powered jobs, brilliant leaders, and yet that's the common limiting belief that links everyone, and it seems to drive people on to prove the worth. And so it's interesting, isn't it?
I was watching, there's a program on Netflix, Being Gordon Ramsay. And because I had made up a decision about Gordon Ramsay and I labeled that I don't like him, I thought that may not be fair. I'm going to watch this program. And I watched it. It is incredible to watch somebody like him, as accomplished as he is, with millions, with countless Ferraris, with 2,500 people staff, with saying that it would still mean a lot to him for his father to have been alive
Ah,
to acknowledge his success,
yes.
because
Yeah.
his father always diminished what he wanted to do.
Ah, that's
And I
sad.
thought, oh my goodness, this thread, as you
Yeah.
say, that links so many of us and shapes us and limits us. And
Mm, yeah.
it's
No.
but at the same time, you could argue maybe that it's that kind of thing that pushes you
It
to
is.
prove.
Yeah. So not feeling enough leads to proving. It's when proving, and that's where I ended up, where you prove too much, you can end up sick. So it's
Mm,
bringing it back to balance, isn't it?
yes,
And
yes.
yeah. But
Yes, that can be as tricky as anything else. Yeah.
listen, thank you so much for being a guest. And I love that we all live in the same county, so I can see you in person. I would love to stay connected.
We will. It was a joy. Thank you so much. I hope your listeners learned something. I think we can all be inspired by each other.
Yeah,
And I've
definitely.
enjoyed your other podcasts. So keep up the good work. Thank you for asking
Oh,
me.
no, thank you. If you'd like to be notified when the next episode drops, remember to subscribe. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit. Finally, if any of these topics have sparked your interest and you'd like to work with me, you can apply for a free discovery call at estellereed.com. Let's see if we're a good fit. You'll also find plenty of free resources there. I'm Estelle Reed, executive coach, speaker, and best-selling author, and this has been the Optimizing Your Brilliance podcast. Thanks for listening. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. Please consult with a qualified professional for any specific advice related to your situation.